Welcome to the second episode of the podcast Brain Cells, where we try to figure out how life works and how we can make life work for us. Today, I'm going to introduce two ideas or views, standpoints of philosophers to you, which are David Hume, who did live in the 18th century, and Arthur Schopenhauer, who mainly lived in the 19th century. They both agree on morality has to have a basis different from egoism, genuinely its own, in sympathy, compassion, and benevolence. Compassion-based ethics is what today's episode is all about, and I think that's a pretty relevant topic nowadays, and we will in the end also talk about a little abstract, but talk about in relevance or regarding to things that are currently happening. So there's two things that you sees as criteria for actions to be ethical, which is it cannot be attributable to self-love, and he comes up with a conclusion that our inclination tends in favor of the fortune for the general public. Schopenhauer says that an action has more value if it only has the good of another in mind, and only the good of another. So, being completely selfless. He is using the phrase neminem laede, which is Latin, and means do not harm anyone, as an orientation for justice and moral principles. So then the question comes up, how does compassion arise in humans to make them act ethically? And it's very interesting. It's actually partially scientifically trackable or provable, because there are so-called mirror neurons, which are nerve cells that mirror reaction patterns when observed, so that you also react yourself. There is a very good example that I found online, and it is that one area of the neuron system exhibits greater activation in our brains when we observe someone picking up a cup to have a drink, compared to when we watch the same person picking the cup up just to clear it from the table. And that's pretty wild what we can do nowadays, and I'm really excited for what the future can bring, and has already brought, and most of the people are not really aware of that, but do your research. But there's basic problems of compassion-based ethics that occur, because when you are looking for a morality, you would want it requires impartial universality, and with compassion there's always the problem of a lack of universality. And there's another problem, which is that love and benevolence are rather specific. You don't love everyone the same. And So in individual cases, in everyday life, this might work partially, but if one would cognitively, rationally evaluate whether different situations objectively would not require the same amount of compassion, benevolence, and justice, help, this would result in a moral overload, since one would have to take care of basically the whole world in the same way, and this is just not practicable. So this brings me to thinking of the categorical imperative that Immanuel Kant came up with, and it says, act only in accordance with a maxim which you would want at the same time to become a universal law. I keep that in mind when we think about the things that are going on in the world right now. Because the problem right now is politics seem to be led by a morality that there's only compassion for one feeling, the fear of death. And there's kind of this categorical imperative on it. But it's not being weighed out objectively and rationally. The protection, supposedly, seems to be very one-sided, the protection to keep that imperative, going, or ensure it, seems to be very one-sided, because there might be an acknowledgement, but definitely a lack of compassion with everyone suffering or even dying from the downsides that come with the attempt to protect. So there's this whole cake, and we're just looking at this one slice and not what's happening when we protect this one slice to the rest of the cake. Because when you take out a slice of a cake, the cake's not whole anymore, and you can't sell it no more. So there's always more sides to a story than one. And if you want to, what I said, the dilemma is that you want to spread your compassion evenly and in a way that there's justice. So you don't want to give a problem more attention, or a person or a group of people, than another group. So you want to be just. And before I mentioned the problem with compassion-based ethics is that there's a lack of universality, but that's needed to build a morality. So that is what's been done here. Is there is this lack of universality, but we still made it one. So we made something into a categorical imperative, which neglected too many aspects of the whole thing and the outcome and the results. So consequentialists would have a big problem with that too. And we're going to into that later in another episode. consequentialism. I hope that's the correct translation for the term, because as I said, I studied this in English, and this looks more on or only on the consequences of an action. So if those are ethically or not, and not the intention. So the intention has a big importance always, and but the outcome is even more relevant for consequentialists, because it's nice to have a good intention, but you can still F up the whole thing. So you can try to tackle someone right before he's about to score, but if you have the good intention to do it in a fair way, but you still commit a foul, then the referee will not care if your intentions were good and honorable, because the outcome is that you fouled the guy, and they're gonna get a penalty. And this is, of course, only sports, but it's an example that I just came up with, in the lack of better examples. But what I'm trying to say is, only because you feel you're doing the right thing doesn't mean you're doing the right thing. And especially when you haven't really thought through, and it's very spontaneous or not really thought out what you're doing. And there are actions that have very many consequences and reactions that follow. And what I want everyone to be aware of is to see and try to see the whole picture more. Try to not judge too fast, because nowadays the problem is that people do have opinions on everything after 0.1 research. They build opinions so quickly and take over other people's opinions so quickly without any questioning and analyzing the problem, the issue, that this is leading to a huge divisiveness throughout the country, throughout the whole world, because people start having an opinion on things they should not allow themselves to have an opinion. Because an opinion should only be built when you at least have some background knowledge. And you want to have the most background knowledge and consequential knowledge and research and whatnot, according to the size of the problem, of course, that you don't want to judge too fast, because you don't know consequences, motivations. And this is very sad, and that people are so easy to be manipulated so quickly into taking over opinions that have no actual basis whatsoever. That's just what I basically also wanted to point out today. I hope you enjoyed this installation, the second episode of my podcast. I hope you take something home and apply to your own life and to your way of thinking and to your rationale, to your ratio, to your decision processes, and not to judge anything or anyone too quickly, because almost every one of us, if it's a personal relationship, has experienced that you were kind of judgy in the beginning, and when you found out more about the person, your whole view and opinion changed. And I think everyone has experienced that, but still people keep doing it and are becoming more aggressive and louder and stronger and more opinionated with less and less information on the issues they have such great opinions on. With that being said, have a good day, and keep inspiring me and engaging to make me, enable me to put out good content for you, nice topics, also my view on things. And I also always want to get your input, so please, if you enjoy this and want to enjoy more and be more interactive, join my Facebook group, subscribe to this channel, and hopefully also share it with your friends on all kinds of social media channels. I hope you keep listening and subscribed. Have a good day and week. Bye-bye. Till next time.